Hi, my name is Gabriel with Mattow. Today we have a build project. Let's go. All right, so today we're building a picnic table. I'm going to put the plans up right now. These plans are available as always on my Patreon page. You can go ahead and check that out. Links will be in the description, of course. Now, the first thing we're going to be doing on here is the subframe. So we're going to take that out and take a look at these. So these are 4 pieces of wood. They're going to be 5 inches wide, so we're going to straighten those out on our table saw right over there. And there's a little bit of a complicated joinery on here, but not super complicated. If you know how to do a half lap, everything on here is pretty simple. So we're going to start on doing that. And yeah, we'll start doing that. Let's go. All right, so what I have here is 2 pieces that we decided to clamp together. And these are going to end up being pairs for the remainder of the project. So it's going to be either side of the frame itself. So what we're going to do, we're going to cut them to length at the same time. We're going to mark them at the same time when they're clamped up, so that when we're ready to put them together, they're all going to have exactly the right uh, cuts in the right places. So we're going to go ahead and do this cutting to length right now, and I'll see you on your side, I guess. Just making sure there's no obvious damage to this. There isn't. What we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and use our speed square over here. Could be a quake square, could be a rafter square, whatever you guys call it. And I'm just going to go ahead and mark this at a certain angle. So this is going to be 22 and a half, and we'll bring it in. So if you guys are not familiar with speed square, is that these markings over here are angles, and there's a pivot point over here. So when you pivot, wherever it is back here is going to be the angle that you're going to be marking it at over here. So I'm going to go ahead and put it at about 22 and a half. No, pretty close to where I need it. This is not a precision thing at all. Just something to guide me towards this line over here. Just like that. So now I have a marking that's pretty close to 22 and a half. And we're going to go ahead and cut that off next. I use a 2-tape system to find the middle of any piece of wood. And over here, you can see it's at 44. It matches it perfect. So I know that's the center. So I'm going to do, I'm just going to mark it with pencil. Right there. Take my tapes off. Grab my combination square. I'm going to mark that off as my center. All right, so the first thing we'll be marking here is a 2-inch span on this over here to make a 2-inch hole. So I need a 1/4 of an inch like gap in there. So I'm going to go ahead and measure that out. So I'm going to use a 6, so it's going to be 7 and 5, 1 inch on either side. Now the second one that I need is going to be a total width of this later on, because there's going to be a half lap cut inside of this. Now the total width of this is going to be 4.5. It's going to be 1.5 inch. So total width of this is going to be 4.5. It's going to be 3 2.5 inch or 1.5 inch boards squished together. So that means it's going to be 2.25 on each side. 2 1/4, 2 1/4. And that's going to give us the span of everything. Now I'm just going to go ahead and check it to make sure that it's where I want it. 4.5, that's perfect. And 2. Yeah, 2. That's the first one, this little off. There. Okay, so now I'm going to mark him again with my square. Now these lines are going to be transferred to it later on when I'm going to do the marking for the half lap. These 2 lines over here, I'm going to cut. Just going to put it right on the 8. I'm going to cut 1/4 of an inch on your side. So I'm just going to go ahead and use a knife and cut that with a knife. I'm going to find my knife. This is great when I can't find my knife. Usually right there. Great. That's right in front of me. All right. So now what we're going to do at these lines over here, I'm going to go ahead and cut about 1/4 of an inch deep on either side, because we're going to go ahead and cut these next. All right. So what that's going to do is going to give me 1/4 of an inch on both sides. So it's going to total 1/2 an inch plus the 1.5 inches. It's going to give me a 2 inch by 2 inch square hole that you can put like an umbrella through it. Doing our tip of the day here today, and it's pretty simple. We're going to use a speed square to put our screws in line with each other, and at the same time put it at the distance that we want to put them in. So first one's going to be 1 inch from the side. The other one's going to be right in the middle. The other one's going to be 1 inch from the side. Now our screws perfectly aligned. That was your tip of the day. All right, so the subframe is done. So I guess it's a good time to ask you to subscribe, follow, leave me a message of everything I've done wrong, why I use hand tools, because they're fun. But in more serious notes, there's two main reasons why I start off with the subframe. The first one is because this is the longest piece of the whole build, and typically when you're building something, you want to cut the longest pieces first and use a runoff from those pieces to fill out your cut list as you're going along. The second reason is because this right here is the most complicated part of the build, and I like doing the most complicated stuff first because everything else is kind of like downhill from there. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and cut all the other pieces to length or rough length. It's going to be about 1 inch or 2 longer, which is going to give me some room to play around with them later on. So I'm going to start with that, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, so I don't have a miter station or anything like that, so all I have is a stick that's taped to my miter saw, and at the end of the stick I got a block that's taped on it, and that's going to give me accurate cuts at that distance with, nice clean cuts. for the height of the leg for the picnic table. Now, I build hundreds of these, so I have a template for the height of this. Now, I know that you guys don't have a template for this, so what I'm doing is I'm going to show you exactly how to gauge the height of this thing over here. So what I've done is I clamped a piece over here to the bottom of the leg, and then I clamped that to my bench. So what I have over here is a square, and I want to measure this and just keep this as square as possible. You don't need to be 100% perfect. We're trying to get, to a place where you can use it. And for this, you want it at 28.5. So I just want to put a line, 28.5, somewhere like there. Okay. And then we're going to use the speed square, give us the angle that we have down here up there. And that's going to give us the height of our legs. Once you add in the 1.5 inches for the tabletop, that's going to give you a 30-inch table. That's what we want. All right, let's keep on going. What I have over here is a jig, and all it does is hold this frame over here at the level that we need it to be secured. Now we slipped in our legs in between the 3 layers of our frame. And now what we're going to do, we're going to use lag bolts in order to secure everything together. First thing we're going to do is figure out where we want to put these holes. It's going to be at the first edges or further edge of these two. So it's going to be diagonal at the first edge. The first thing we're going to be using is a pilot hole. All right, so the reason why we put these pilot holes is just for the Forstner bit that we're going to be using. This bit right here, so it doesn't slip around as much. Now we try and go about 1/2 inch with this Forstner bit so that the head of the lag bolt is going to be completely concealed so you don't hit it with your legs or anything like that. Next up, we're going to be using a pilot hole for our lag bolts. And then our lag bolts themselves. It's there somewhere. And there you have it. I'm just going to put a hole where I'm just going to put the hole where the umbrella goes over here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use the head from my combination square as a guide to drill things nice and straight. So what I did, I just started off just a little bit so my drill is still nimble. And I'm going to go ahead and put this down here. And now I know it's straight going this way and that way. Again. There we go. Okay. Now we have our pilot for our hole saw. Do it halfway through. That thing is not well placed. Good. All right, so now we're just going to cut the other side. There we go. I like to save these cores. I like to save these cores and make sanding drums out of it. So I'm going to grab one right now. I'm going to put the sanding drum on here. Now I'm going to sand the inside of the ridge. Okay. Go ahead and do a round over here. Turn it around and do the top side. There we have it. We have our whole. Hi, future me here. I did a little bit of a screw up. I deleted all the footage for the remainder of the video. So this is me trying to save the video by saying to you that I'm going to show you step by step using the 3D render that I already built in order to explain to you how everything goes together. Now, for those of you who only want to see the finished table, I'm just going to leave a picture of it right here. This is how it looks at the customer's house. This is the table itself. All right, so the last thing that I remember showing you guys on the video was just me making the circle for the center, umbrella post. So from there, we go directly to building a tabletop. The way that I build a tabletop, I build them upside down. Now, this one in particular was pretty big, so I built it directly outside onto my trailer. Now, there's 11 pieces over here, and the way that I spaced them out is I spaced them out using these things over here. These are dominoes. I don't know if you can see them. I'm gonna try and get in there. Maybe you can see them there. I'm not sure if it actually focused into that. So these dominoes are basically the thing. These biscuits over here are basically what the thing was before dominoes was a thing. We used to use biscuit jointers. I still have my biscuit jointer. I still use it all the time. I don't have a domino, so when I need something to line things up, I use these biscuits. The first thing I connected together was these outside supports. So the way that I install these with glue, screws, and everything else, and I also use these hand clamps over here. They're super useful. they're small, but they give you enough support to be able to at least bring these pieces of wood nice and flat to it. And that's really going to give you that nice, crisp, straight angle on the picnic table. Um, so I take a lot of care and able to do the outside edges first. Then I move to the other supports that go underneath there that will not uh, be in the way of the legs themselves. So I knew roughly where these were going to be going, so I put them where I thought they were going to be needed. And I just, again, they're screwed and glued into place. And these are good enough to hold this whole table together for, as long as this table is going to be alive, basically. Next step is to attach the subframe to the table itself. Now, I did come into a little bit of a hiccup over here. Basically, I need to notch out the leg in order to fit everything together. Now, the tool that I use in order to do this is one of these oscillating saws. I'll try and block my face. Hopefully, you can get it. So, hopefully, you got it. Sure. So, basically, these oscillating saws are pretty good for this type of work. All I do is I just line it up onto a piece of wood flat, and then I'm able to use it and just go ahead and cut it. So I use the frame itself, the frame underneath there, so the supports themselves, to cut this notch onto the table. And then I moved the whole frame assembly to make sure that it fit where it needed to fit. And if I need to adjust it, I adjusted it. If I didn't, then good. I can go ahead and continue on with the build. Now, the way that this thing is attached, it's attached with these carriage bolts over here. These are the bolts that have like the rounded tops, and there's a little square edge in between the top and where you bolt everything in together. And what happens is that when you bring these screws in, they kind of jam itself where the square is so it doesn't turn, and it's really super easy to be able to drive them in. So that's how we secured the legs to that. So there's three layers. So you need a pretty big drill bit in order to drill out the holes for these bolts. So I got this one over here. It's about 1 foot long, and that works out pretty good. Now, in order to stop it from blowing out, the way I do it is I put a piece of wood, like from my scrap pile, basically, in behind there, and I use these clamps again to make sure they're flat against the wood, and I just drill right through them, and wherever it's going to blow out, it's going to blow out from my scrap, not the piece of wood that stays on the table. So the supports over here, I use 3 screws and then 2 bolts, basically, and everything's like glued and screwed together like everything else in this table. Then come the other legs. The other legs are going to be bolted down exactly the same way, but into the main support line. The supports on this one are going to be a little bit shorter. They're going to be about 2 inches shorter because there's going to be like a hole in between that. Now I could just notch it out and keep those out there, but I didn't. I just cut the frame rail, like the frame's a little bit shorter, and everything is screwed and glued together, so they shouldn't be moving around anyways. I don't think it'll be much of a problem. I mean, 11 2x6s is a lot of wood, so I don't think it'll move around anyways. So that's the tabletop attached to the legs. And at this point, I don't put the seats on right away. I bring it to where the table is going to be sitting permanently. At this point, I went to the customer's house, so I strapped everything out down to a trailer, and I went there. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take these seats off of the 3D render, put it on the side over here, and I'll show you a little bit of what's going on here. So the seats are 3 pieces of wood, and the supports are going vertically along there. Now these are glued and screwed at the same distance on the outside as my cross member at the bottom is going to be. Now these are already all done up. this part of the video, you saw me do them a little bit earlier. Now what I need to do is screw the legs on to those supports. Now again, I use glue and a couple of screws to hold them there. These legs are essentially the weakest point of this entire table. So next I put them on top of the frame rail. But before I do that, I just put like a block underneath the leg just to lift it up by a couple inches. It does two things. One, I can move around the seat a little bit better because it's not touching the ground anywhere. Secondly, is that whenever I'm going to be underneath there and using a drill, I got room for the drill and everything else. A little bit more room. 3 inches is, a lot of room for some reason. It's a lot more than no inches. All right. So I align the benches by eye to make sure they look good when I put them on there. You can use a square, but what you realize with the square is that it's going to look a little bit off. So I just use it by eye, and I get as close as I can with my eyes to make it look good all the way around. Then I put screws in the middle of the seat itself, and I align that with, a speed square or something. So they're nice and aligned this way. So when you're looking at it, these are the only screws you're going to be able to see. They're going to be nice and aligned with the bench. Then I go underneath the bench itself and I put this frame rail in. So the rail underneath there has pocket screws to screw into the seat, the legs themselves. So that's how I attach the legs to the whole frame rail system. So the first thing I want to do is I push up against it so it's nice and flat with the subframe. And then I put one of the screws in on either side. And then I put 2 screws right into the frame rail. And then I finish up the pocket screws. So that's going to prevent the legs from going like this, or, popping in by inside or moving around side to side. So it should give it a lot of support, but again, these are going to be the weakest points of the entire bench, so it's a good thing to explain to the customer. At this point, I'll drop down the bench, sit down on the table with the customer. It does 2 things. One, I get a feeling of how the entire build feels like for me. I get to talk to the customer a little bit and give them an idea how this will feel in a social setting. And it gives me an idea of how to recommend this table to future customers whenever I'm able to talk to them. For example, some tables might pinch your legs a little bit. Other tables don't do that. This table in particular is very, very, very comfortable to be able to sit around and talk to whoever you want to talk about. Anyways, if you enjoy this kind of content, leave a like, subscribe, share it with whoever you think would enjoy this. And I'll see you next time. Probably going to build a garden or something like that. I mean, I'm in the middle of building a garden right now. So, yeah. See you next time. Bye.